In the fast-paced world of business, finding a clear path to profitability can be a challenge. Welcome to 0 to 100 with your host, Jared Guy Randolph, seasoned business and finance expert. Tune in for actionable insights and strategies to accelerate your business success.
Hello, Accelerators. Today on 0 to 100, we're going to have a master management coach and trainer. He used to run Ford Motor Cars' global coaching program. He's a university professor, a #1 selling author on Amazon, and he has trained over 10,000 salespeople and managers in 40 countries. We're going to go over some really exciting topics like how you measure the financial impact of culture, as well as how to make really good decisions based on really good data. Let's welcome Chris Hunsicker. Ladies and gentlemen, let's accelerate together. All right, we have Chris Hunsicker with us today. Chris, great to have you.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Chris is a master trainer, management guru extraordinaire who has trained some of the top managers in the nation in the automotive industry, as well as other industries. And we're very excited to have you here today.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So Chris, let's have a little bit of a conversation around one of the main things that you focus on within your training system. And it's really important for businesses because it equates to dollars on their bottom line, and that is culture. Can you talk a little bit about, or at least define, what the tangible cost of bad culture is to a company?
Yeah, and I would actually call this defining the cost of mediocrity. In other words, most organizations spend 90% of their time trying to build a strategic plan or an approach to go through, and pennies on what they're going to spend on execution. And at the end of the day, culture is what do you do consistently day in and day out? How do you behave? In other words, your ability to execute. And we look at our financial statements, and there are so many things that are not on the financial statement, yet we know they cost money. For example, you have a manager or a leader, let's say a sales manager, who is emotionally volatile, right? And we all know this guy, and he's really, very talented in a lot of ways, but he just goes off on people. And we never define the cost of that. Everybody knows when he's screaming and yelling at people, it spins you out and your head's not in the game, and you can't go out and close the sale and get something done. But there's no line item on the financial statement that says manager can't control temp or minus $200,000. It's an expense. It just doesn't show up on there. And so people all the time ask me, like, Chris, like as a executive coach, what do you do? And I said, if my short answer, I help managers not be idiots. The vast majority of people know what to do, and they know how to do it. They just work for an idiot.
So you use an example of that $200,000. It's, less $200,000 to your bottom line, because I don't know if that's a month, if that's a year. It obviously depends on the business. Is there actually a way for somebody who's a business owner to say, yeah, I've got a manager who seemingly is performing well, but has a bad temper and people don't like him and there always seems to be conflict? Can they actually do a calculation to quantify what the loss is from that outlier who's not within culture for the team?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, let's do a calculation right here, because I think when you see it, it makes so much more sense.
Okay.
So I was in Southern California, and I'm working with a very large car dealership, and I'm going through a engagement survey where we did a survey to look at the level of engagement that employees have. It's a great measure of culture. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions was, if I do something right, my manager will notice and say something. And this guy scored incredibly low, like in the single digits. And another question said, if I do something wrong, my manager will notice and say something, which he scored like 96. And as we started to go through the results, my general sales manager's pretty good guy, just in the middle of the room says, Chris, this is a bunch of crap, man. I don't do unicorns and rainbows, and I don't hug people. I sell cars and I make money. And I am clear and direct. And if people don't like it, that's too bad. And I said, well, let me ask you then, would you say you are a bottom line, results-oriented person that doesn't screw around and you can deal with the hard truth directly? And he said, absolutely. And I said, okay, here's the deal. I want to do a little 10-minute coaching session, and I think I can help you make an extra $500,000 a year. Are you open to it? And he goes, I don't believe you can make $500,000 for me in 10 minutes, but I got 10 minutes. Tell me what you got. And I said, super. I said, have you ever done a training on a Tuesday morning, sales training, and you go over exactly the steps to sale and what you want your people to do, And then that afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, your salespeople are not doing the very thing you told them about.
That happens a lot.
All the time. I said, good, give me an example. And he just, a very expletive-laden, intense explanation. That's awesome. Give me another example. Same kind of thing. I said, now let me ask you a question. Do you think those salespeople ever walked away from your desk after their coaching session with their head spun out, not in the game, went out to meet with a customer, and as a result, they didn't really have a car sale? And I said, those customers came into your store, wanted to buy a car, were willing to buy a car, but because your salesperson couldn't show up, they went and bought a car somewhere else. He goes, yeah. I said, do you think that happens very often? He goes, yeah. I said, how many times a month do you think that happens? He goes, I don't know, 5 or 10. I said, let's be ultra conservative. Let's say that happens twice a month for each salespeople. How many sales guys on your team? 9. So I got 9 salespeople twice a month, 18 times. What do you do on the cost of a car? How much you making on a car, front end and back end? He goes, it's about $3,000, $3,500. I go, let's go 3,000. It's easier math.
Okay.
Now, this key that I call denominating the cost of mediocrity is you've got to marry the behavior to the result to the cost. That's the simplest thing. So his behavior is going off on a salesperson. The result is the salesperson not closing a car sale. The cost, the profit you would have made on the car sale. Because your expenses are fixed, right? The lights, the heat's heat. This is extra profit. So I said to him, great. Now, let's take 18 times $3,000. He goes, I go, how much is that? And he goes, a whole bunch. And again, used a little more profanity-laden answer. And I said, this is great. It's not English class. It's math. How much does that cost?
$540,000.
Exactly.
Wow.
And I said, now, you and I both know that number's way higher than 2. And you and I both know that number's way higher than, 500,000. It's closer to $1 million. He goes, yeah. And I said, now you said you're a straight shooter, no excuses, and you want to deal with the data. He goes, yeah. I said, okay, so no hugs and no being nice. There's the owner of the business. Turn to him, explain to him why we as a business, in addition to paying you a salary and your commission and your bonuses, why we should pay $1 million tax each year because you can't control your temper. I'm all in. And he goes, you are an SOB. I said, you have no idea.
So what do you call that? You said you called it the dumb tax? What did you call that scenario with the manager?
Yeah. I said at the cost of mediocrity, right? Or you end up paying a stupid tax in this case because the business is literally giving up income from customers that came into the store and wanted to buy a car, but they went somewhere else because this general sales manager spun them out. And yet when I talked to that general sales manager later in this conversation, he had equated this tough, hard, nail people attitude with him being successful. And what I shared with him at the end was, you are successful in spite of that behavior, not because of that behavior.
So go ahead, keep going.
No. When I looked at him and I said, you give me one goal you wanted to hit that you haven't been able to hit. And he says, we've been number 2 in our market for 4 years. I've never been number 1. And I said, if you picked up that extra $1 million, you picked up those cars, could you hit number 1? He said, yeah. I said, here's the deal. I'll be your coach and I'll work with you, but you got to work with me. But you got to understand, I'm a no excuses, straightforward kind of guy. And he slipped at me and he said, you're an idiot. I got to know, do you want to talk about the goal or do you want to hit the goal? He said, I want to hit the goal. I said, do you want to coach and get better? And he goes, I do. And 18 months later, he was number 1.
So the cost that bad management can have to a business is massive. And I want to recap this because I think it's really important for the audience to drive this in, because some people might recognize it in themselves. They might also recognize it in a member of their team. But if you've got management that is constantly creating conflict within their sales team and their sales team is off their goal, you could be losing a massive amount of money. And take the example of the car dealership. You've got 9 salespeople. They walk out of the office of the manager, their head spinning, they're not focused. A customer comes in and at least 2 times a month, they miss a sale. So of those 9 people, that's 18 missed sales a month. And if they are netting $3,000 a sale over the course of a year, that is $540,000 that the business misses because the company culture is off and it's all starting at the top. So that is one thing that's incredibly important, is you have to have management that is working in tandem energetically with the salespeople on your sales team.
Yeah, 100%. And because it's not a line item in the financial statement, it doesn't get urgency. Most managers would say, yeah, I know my temper's a little bit strong. Yeah, I know I'm a little bit hard on people, but we get stuff done. Well, let's denominate that. And he was a good manager and he worked hard, but he had that in spite of, because of mix. He associated it. But once I did the math, he was on board. He went from not wanting to be in this meeting, thinking my survey was stupid, to within 1 hour, he was fully committed to being his coach. And we hard for a year and a half and get to number one because he was there. He just didn't understand how expensive that was. That's why denominating the cost is so critical.
So let's talk about what the steps would be when looking at your line items within your business, what you should be adding in there around culture. So if you were to say, I've got my balance sheet, I've got my P&L, and I've got my culture balance sheet, for lack of a better term, what would you have on there that you should be measuring as an owner manager of a sales team or a company?
If you're looking at measuring culture, I always want to begin with data. So in this case, remember I had the employee engagement survey? So I would want to look at, okay, specific managerial behaviors that look at, feedback, that look at leadership behavior, that look at consequences for bad behavior, that look at accountability and rewards, the simple basic functions of leadership and management.
Gotcha.
And once I get that survey, so in this case, the data said that if he did something wrong, right on top of it, but if he did something right, there was hardly any feedback about what was going on. So one of the things that we worked on with him was his ratio of positive to negative communication was off. Think about it. If you're in a marriage, this is John Gottman at the University of Washington, he'll say that if your ratio, he can actually film you and your wife or your significant other partner and watch you for 15 minutes, code the ratio of your language, and he can predict with 94% accuracy whether you'll still be married in 5 years from one 15-minute exchange.
Wow.
And one of the major things in that was the ratio of your positive and negative communication. So the starting with, and same thing, if you look at business school, we looked at, this is University of Michigan, businesses that went through downsizing, 85% never come back to where they were. Only 15% ever go on to succeed beyond that. And so we took a whole study of them, right? The 15% that went on and looked at what made them different than the rest. Because once you start downsizing, you're basically done. And what they found was in these few companies that went up, that the ratio of positive and negative communication between managers and their frontline people, managers and each other, 5 positive to 1 negative. So
go ahead.
No, please.
Let's talk about when you have that person, then I want to come back to creating that culture for an existing business. But let's talk about right now, when you find that person who's not willing to change, but they still have talent and add value, when do you know when to cut the cord?
So let's go back to data and math. As you can tell, I'm a big fan of results in math. And I call this the net usable talent, NUT, right? So every organization, people have a net usable talent. So there's your talent, less your cost to the organization is your net usable talent. In the same way that net profit really doesn't matter what your top line revenue is. It matters what your net profit is, because you can only spend net profit dollars. You cannot spend revenue dollars.
Right.
And we see this in sports teams. If you go back to the late 90s with the Seattle Mariners, at one point, the Seattle Mariners lost, they lost Randy Johnson, they lost Tito Martinez, and I think there's one other person they lost. And I mean, great all-star Hall of Famers that they lost. And yet the following year was the year that they lost to the A's. Remember, they were like 103, 104 win team and lost to the A's on that crazy play. But the team actually got better when they lost some of the best all-stars. And that's a weird dynamic you see in sports a lot, and you see it in business. So let's say that I have 2 salespeople. I've got Javier and I've got Maria. All right. So Javier is my top dog, and let's use automotive retail. So he's selling 27, 28 cars a month consistently, has a 30, has a 25, but he's also that guy that sucks all the oxygen out of the room, that is consistently like late for meetings because I'm the top dog and I don't have to do that. He's loose on following rules. He doesn't get drunk. You guys know this prima donna person we're talking about. Everybody knows Javier, okay?
Yep.
And Javier, even though he individually sells a lot, he kind of dampens the whole team, and everybody knows that. But nobody knows, like, man, do I keep Javier? Do I not? What do I do? Because I don't want to lose his production. And I would suggest you use what I call the net usable talent calculation. So just like the cost of mediocrity, we looked at what is it this behavior cost. So again, we're going to do the same thing. Javier has terrible paperwork, so the office has to spend extra time to clean up his effort and clean up his, mistakes. He is a negative impact on the team and what goes through. So we're going to calculate that. Now, on the other hand, over here, I've got Maria. Now, Maria only sells about 18 cars a month, so a good 10 cars a month less, or we're looking at about a 30% less production level. But Maria is the one that is always there to help everybody else. Maria is the one that when you're on your day off and you can't make it in, she'll deliver the car for you and not make you split the deal. She'll just go back and forth. She's one of these glue people. Do you know what I mean? That and in the meeting, she's the one that's the early adopter on the new stuff. She's always bringing a positive attitude. Like when she walks into the room on a tough day, everybody goes, okay, good. Like Maria's here, it's going to be okay. Whereas when it's a tough day and Javier walks in, people go, we're screwed. So, that kind of difference, but we don't calculate the value. So net usable talent, what I'm going to do is say, you know what? If you look at the actual revenue or profit, just the office wasting time to clean up Javier's deals, it costs us 2 deals a month easily. And then if you look at the fact that he screws with other people's heads, he's kind of guy that likes to go mess with the new guys and the other people and just generally be a twit. That probably costs the whole team another 5 car deals a month. And then he's the kind of person that he won't support the leadership team. Like he's always going back and forth manage. There's like an insubordination about him that if you look at other people following that costs us another couple of car deals. So by the time I add in what really it costs us, his sales are 28 a month, but his net is 18.
Oof.
Okay. Now on the other hand, I got Maria, who and she's 18, but because she's an early adopter going through, we get a couple 2 car sales a month that we wouldn't have gotten just because of her energy and presence. The glue factor that she brings in and getting everybody together and keeping the floor running smooth and everything is worth another 3 or 4 car deals a month because she's helping everybody get better, not worse. And so her net usable talent is closer to 25 and his net usable talent is closer to 18. So who's a better salesperson?
Whoa. Wow. So this is something that is really important for business to measure, which is that, as you call it, the net usable talent. And that net usable talent is taking the talent less the expense to the business that's giving you your net profit. In the case of Javier Maria, Javier produces $100,000 a month at gross. But because he's late, he doesn't follow policy, he's bad with paperwork, he creates negative culture, it's really costing the business an additional $40,000 a month. So he's netting $60,000 to the month. But in the case of Maria, she's a team player. She might sell less and only be selling $60,000 a month, but in net profit, but the added value to helping others, filling in, following the rules, having great paperwork is really an additional $20,000 to the business. So net, Maria's producing $80,000 a month. Yep. And Javier is producing $60,000 a month. And Javier, ultimately, it sounds like to me, is not someone you really even want in the organization. So when you figured that out, what do you advise a business owner to do?
You move on. Like this is the essence of leadership and management is to make really good decisions based on really good data. Once the data tells you that Javier's not the guy, you got to move on because Javier is going to be a top dog in somebody else's thing. But once you know someone doesn't fit your culture, you have to move on. Otherwise, you don't really have a culture.
So you said, wow, I'd never really thought about it even from a sales perspective, because if I look back at the beginning of my career and being in the real estate sales side of it, we definitely had some people like that who were in the office who were just pain in the neck. I mean, I've seen companies protect people who were abusive, cheated on deals, etc. Like the heads of the companies, I could name them, I'm not going to, who were terrible people, but because they sold so much properties, they kept them around, but it created such a negative culture. And this idea of making really good decisions with really good data replaces that mindset of it being a difficult decision. It's not a difficult decision if you're backing up the cultural decisions you're making and the talent decisions you're making based on data and using things like the net usable talent scale when measuring your team.
Absolutely. And interestingly, the fear, right, that these senior people you're talking about were going to lose their production.
Mm-hmm.
In nearly every case, you take a Javier out, well, almost everybody else in the organization sells a couple, 2, 3 more cars a month, and the net to the organization is significantly better. You don't you don't miss them. I go through a specific example in the book, and I don't even, the store gets better 30 days later. Like 30 days later, the store is breaking records because there's a real, the way you describe those offices, it's the negative effect on the other 20 people in the office that kills everybody, not the one person that the bosses are protecting.
Well, isn't that kind of contrary to what they typically say, that 20% of your sales team does 80% of the business,
Mm-hmm.
and the other 80% does 20% of the business? Isn't
Right.
that contrary if you have people who are part of that 20% selling the 80, contrary to popular belief?
Kind of. Let's go deeper into the data and take a look at that.
Okay.
So the general rule of thumb that 20% of your people do 80% of your business is accurate. That's true, and that goes through. The first assumption is that in order to be in the 20%, you have to be one of these selfish idiots. You have to be a Javier. Not true. As a matter of fact, 2 things happen. When in your 20% is a Javier, it depresses the 80% even more.
Right.
Right. So remember, if I get a 10% increase in the 20%, that's not as much as if I get a 10% increase in the 80%. This is much higher. Okay. And 2, when you take the Javiers out of the 20%, you tend to get another 20%er in there. But that 20%er is more like Maria and not like Javier. That you're looking for people that have the cultural fit. So yes, it goes through, but if the 20% depresses the 80%, then every point of market share, every point of depression goes through. It's multiplied by 8, not by 2.
That makes, okay. So let's talk about this, because I think this topic is very important for business owners. Let's say we've got a business who's been running for 5 to 10 years and they're doing quite well, but they're hitting a wall and they're not selling more product. How should they be assessing their business? And their business is a sales business with salespersons. How should they be assessing their business to figure out where the gaps are, who on their team is succeeding, who on their team is failing, and making or creating a path forward to start to grow the business even more?
That's $1 million question, right? That we could spend hours answering, and it's multi-factor. But let me give you one simple insight, which is a great way to begin that conversation. So think of it as, and let's say this was a business that had been successful in the past, right? But they kind of hit a plateau and they've plateaued out and gone through. I will promise you that when they were at their best, there were certain things that they were doing that they have now stopped doing. And when they were at their best, there were certain things they weren't doing that they've now started doing. There's an element of fat, dumb, and happy in here that goes on. And one of the first things that I'll do when I have a business owner, a general manager, or if I have a leadership team, and they're in that place, they're stuck in that plateau. First thing I'm going to do is I say, I want you to go back to a time when you were ripping it, when you were awesome. Not a week, not a weekend, not a month, but a window of time. And I'll say, think back, when were you on your groove, on top of your game? And everybody can tell me, especially in sales, right? Everybody knows when they were on. And what happens is you have a car sales guy that for a while was selling 30 cars a month, for several years. And now he's selling 18 cars a month. And he's been doing that for several years. And I ask him, and I say, hey, Jared, how many cars a month do you sell? You're going to say 30.
Oh, 30.
No. It's a 30-car guy because he used to sell 30 cars. Now, you haven't sold 30 cars in a couple of years, but you still tell people you're a 30-car a month car guy. And this happens in sales all the time. We remember when we were great and we assume that's who we are, even though we stopped behaving that way. The only reason you're not getting the results is because you're not behaving in the way that you did when you got the results. So I would sit down with this manager or this owner or this leadership team. I said, okay, now tell me about this time when you guys were great. And they will. They said, now I want you to think back your days, your weeks, your month coming in, walk through a day in your mind with me. First thing in the morning, what would you do? What would you do every day before you left for lunch? What was the last thing you do before you leave? What were the things that you knew were absolutely driving sales and making stuff happen? What was non-negotiable behavior for? We'll just start chucking all this stuff down. I say, now, what are some things you absolutely would not do? No matter how much you wanted to, no matter, you're just like, that is not me. I will not do that. And I start charting them down. And I said, now, let me ask you, how much of this stuff are you currently doing? And how much of this stuff did you stop doing? And every time there's just a collective like, oh crap in the room. I
think one of the things that's really difficult for salespeople to quantify is what they do that makes them very successful in sales. And I've ran into this in my career at times where things would seem to be at a lull in one of my businesses. And one of the ways I've built a lot of business and gained traction in any and everything that I've done is leaning on my network and the relationships that I have and building from there, learning to make the ask, get exposure, ask for new connections, which then helped me build my book of business, whether it was in a fintech play, a real estate play, a capital raise play. And I have been guilty of also forgetting that I have to get back to the basics. That's how I've built my career. Some people cold call, some people send emails, some people will literally set up meetings with different type of trade groups and do presentations. If you were to talk to a salesperson or a business owner who has hit that wall, what are the 5 key things they should be looking at? Because you just already gave us a very quick and brief overview on how to sit down and analyze what happened in the past when you were being successful. What are the 5 key things that that business owner should be looking at to get back in the groove and start driving more business?
So, okay, number 1, I would say is a mindset thing. And Phil Stutz talks about this in his book, The Tools, but he basically says that pain, hard work, and uncertainty are fundamental to life, and you will never be exonerated from them. Okay, like all of us believe that if I just find the right partner, marriage won't be hard, uncertain, and painful. Nope. If I just find the right job, it won't be hard, uncertain, and painful. If I just, like someday I'm going to arrive at a spot in my business where it's no longer going to be hard, uncertain, and painful. And he says you are never exonerated from hard work, pain, and uncertainty. The Navy SEALs talk about embracing the suck, right? That people that were once great and aren't, or who have plateaued and can't go forward. So salespeople who are stuck, the first thing you have to do is you've got to shift your mindset to, I am not working to escape pain, uncertainty, and hard work. I am stepping into it.
Oh,
wow. And that's the beginning. Like just that, without any other 4 that we're going to talk about, will fundamentally change what's going on. Because when your whole approach is, I'm going to gut this out, grit my teeth, and white knuckle it for a little while till I can arrive at arrival land where there's no pain, uncertainty. You're not there. That Tony Robbins says this, that that business is the art of creating better problems, right? Problems never go away. When you solve problems well in life or business, your reward is you get more problems. But the best part is they're better problems to solve. And so that's the first place I'd start with mindset. Number 2 is I would go to frequency of activity. In every sales business, there's a certain activity that, and everybody knows it, but it's contacting customers. That if I change the number of people I talk to, if I elevate that, no matter what my ratio is, if I have to talk to 10 people to make a sale, I could spend a ton of time on trying to get to 20% where I talk to 10 people and I get 2 sales. It is much easier to talk to more people. Now, interesting, if I spend all my time trying to get better at talking to a few people, I get very small result improvements. If I spend a lot of time talking to a lot of people, not only talk to more people, but I get better at talking to those people. Skill comes from repetition in the arena, not from practice in the bathroom. You can practice your word tracks in the bathroom all you want, which is a great start, especially if you're a newbie. But if you're done with being a newbie, you got to get in the arena. You need to get beaten. You need to get no's. It's the land of yes always lives inside the territory of no. And most people don't get enough no's fast enough in order to get really good at their craft to move the needle. So number one, right, we're going to change our mindset to embrace pain, hard work, and uncertainty. Number two, we're going to quit trying to be exaggerated. Number two, you increase the frequency of people that you're talking to. If you're talking to 3 or 4 prospects a day, then start talking to 8, and then find a way to talk to 15. And it's just as simple as everybody talks about the math game to go through, but it is as simple as that.
Right.
And third thing is you need in the moment feedback. When you're changing emotionally intelligent behavior, you need awareness of what's going on, a chance to practice the new and better behavior and feedback on how you're doing. So very few salespeople I've met are willing to do this, but those who are really great do it all the time. When someone tells you no, and it's clear, and you've overcome the objection, then there's just a no, they're not buying. You're spending time with them. You can invest that. Take 1 minute and say, hey, can I ask, what did I do wrong? Like, I lost you somewhere along the way. And most people, they'll tell you because it's over, right? They know we're not going to get there. Hey, I just didn't like your attitude, or, you were too aggressive, or you were too soft, or you couldn't answer my questions, or whatever their thing is. There's so much good. I would put this into a process, and I still use this to this day. Every single night when I get home from work, no matter what I'm doing, who I'm coaching, where I'm working with, I go through this little 5-minute exercise. And in my book, I call it the business journal. And this isn't journaling for your feelings, and we're not trying to heal your inner child. This is about business. And I will sit down and I go, today, in the prospects that I spoke to, people that I coached, what went well? I'm going to write down 3 or 4 things that I know went well. Then I'm going to write down 3 or 4 things that need work. In other words, I didn't fail. I'm not terrible, but they need work. Like, this is where, and then this is the most important thing. In the moment, on that day, after I've just finished it, I write down, what are the 2 or 3 things I'm going to do differently to optimize my day tomorrow? Most people waste time worse than they waste money. In the United States, the richest country in the history of the world, by the time you get to age 65, 97% of people will not be able to live day to day without Social Security.
Wow.
Okay? Everybody knows you need to invest money. Everybody knows that you need to save money. Everybody knows you should do that. And yet, 97% of the people are going to reach age 65, and they cannot survive without Social Security. People are the same way with their time. If I take just a little bit of money, and you guys all know the numbers about compounding interest and how it works, and
Right.
Just in my 20s and 30s, invest some money, I'm going to be well taken care of by the time I get to my 60s. Time's the same way. Most people will work 40, 50, 60, 80 hours in a week, and then start over and do the same thing next week. And then start over and do the same thing next week with no compound. Imagine this. What if I took what went well, what needs work, and how do I improve it today, and I stack that on tomorrow, and that on the next day, and then at the end of the week, I take just 15 minutes to look at the week. Went well, needs work, optimize. At the end of the month, I take an hour. At the end of the quarter, I take 90 minutes. And at the end of the year, I take 4 hours. I'm compounding those insights every single day.
What's important before we get to the last 2 that I want to mention to the audience is I've had this same experience. I've done a ton of mindset work, which mindset is key to getting back in the groove for sales. But I realized that I wasn't using my time wisely in terms of the content that I was putting in, the information I was putting in that was business centric, that was going to help me drive my business. So one of the things that I committed to do and using my time more wisely, instead of watching Netflix at night or a movie, I would spend an hour to 2 hours reading a business book every single day. And that started to give me this arsenal of techniques and tactics that I could use to start pushing my business forward. And it became, again, this compounding effect. And I'm still in the thick of it right now. I still do it right now. I'm finishing Cialdini's Influence. But that's one of the things that's masterful. And if you want to change your trajectory, it's the information you're taking in. And I love the concept of the business journal, where you're doing 2 to 3 things that you did well for the day, 2 to 3 things that need work, and 2 to 3 things the next day that you're going to do to optimize your time. Those things are absolutely key, because it gets into mindset work, because you're focused on what you've done and what needs to be done to push you forward. But it's also setting up yourself for success, because you are focused on what you need to do in business to drive it forward.
Absolutely. So that is what I'm going to call for. But I'm going to drive this into its own category of feeding your mind and your soul. So 2 weeks ago, I'm pretty sure you had lunch.
Yeah.
I guess you have no idea what you ate for lunch.
No idea.
Which is true of most of us. But that day you consumed that food, your body converted it into calories that you used for energy to get stuff done. You need to look at books the same way. Leaders are readers. Now, not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers, or you're going to get left behind. So when I'm coaching you, I've read a book a week since I was 18 years old. I'm probably through a good 2,500 books on psychology, motivation, leadership, culture, and what's gone on. Now, you and I can both get a book, and we can both read it. I will get 10 times more value out of the book than you have, because I can connect it to the previous 2,000 I've read. And for you, it's the first book you've read in 10 years.
Right.
So just say this out loud. The world's going to change faster than it's ever changed. The change is going to come more intensely than it's ever come. And my response is, yeah, I'm not really a reader. Are you an idiot? Like, that's the stupidest thing you could say. That in the most rapidly changing environment that's ever been, my approach is going to be to not learn. Rock on, dude.
You know, for the people out there who struggle with reading, and I've said this before, I struggled with dyslexia my entire life, because I can just rearrange things that just like, you're like, really? Is that what you're looking at? I'm like, yeah. And then you go, oh, wait, that's not what it says on the page. What has helped me become a voracious reader and change that, oh, yeah, I'm not really a reader, is I now read with a book in hand, physical book. I have my ear pods in. I'm listening to the book on Audible. I'm following along in my pen, marking it up, highlighting things. My comprehension has gone through the roof. I make it through 2 to 3 books a week. I'm retaining the information. I'm staying awake, and I'm actually get the gratification of completing these books. And I've been doing this for some time now, and it has become a complete and utter game changer for me. You don't have to be alone when you're reading. You can have something to support you. And there's so many people who have the same affliction that I do, and this will just help you level up. And the hack with that is I listen to my books, and it takes time to get there, anywhere from 2 to 3.5 speed, depending on the complexity of the book. I get through it, and I still comprehend and retain the information, because I've learned to hear faster, which has helped me read faster.
And let's use language here, because it matters. I want you to consume books, not read them. And that's
consume books.
Book. Just like you consume food. And most of us PTSD from school, where book meant test and you had to comprehend it and you couldn't. And that's why people stop reading, because they have PTSD from school.
Yep.
This is food. I don't care if you remember what you ate 2 weeks ago. I just care that you got the calories and the energy. I don't care what you're reading today. I don't care if you retain it. What I know is, if you're spending time consuming that book today, it's going to affect the way you think and talk to people. And then you're going to do it again tomorrow, and you're going to do it again the next day. Some of it's going to stick at your conscious level. Some going to stick at your unconscious level, but you're going to build a base of knowledge, and you're going to build a set of habits. And that's where the value is. So let's dive into the 5th one, because this will stack it all together for you.
Beautiful.
So the 5th thing is, John Maxwell said that you cannot change something in your life unless you change something you do daily. Let that sink in, that the only way to change your life is to change something that you're doing daily. So we're talking about changing our business results. So you must change stuff that you're doing daily. And I like to look at it in terms of streaks. I'm competitive. I was an athlete. I love that. That's why I love sales. I love business. The best thing about sales is there's a public scorecard. You can't hide. Like when you went in the real estate office, you sold a unit or you didn't, right? There's no, and it's the board and it ranks and there's no, I love it. Okay. I have a saying that most people fall in love with their results, so they fall in love with their excuse. And some people love their excuse so much they dress it up, buy things, bring it out, show it to all their friends. But at the end of the day, you will fall in love with your result and own it, or you will fall in love with your excuse and own it. And the best way to deal with that is what I call managing positive and negative streaks. So once you get down through this process, right? We've talked about our mindset. We've gone through the business journal. You've done the stuff. You're getting real clarity on what you need to do and what you need to not do. And so you want to start building streaks of behavior, positive streaks. So I am going to make sure, let's say that you know that you need to talk to 4 customers every day in order to sell a product.
Right.
In the business that you're in, like a car dealership, you average talking to 2 people a day. Well, that means you're going to have to generate 2 other people to talk to, or you ain't going to sell a car that day, right? You just know that.
Right.
So that you got to start tracking, how many days in a row do you talk to 4 people? And nobody's perfect. And that's not, but once you get a good streak going, if you notice, once you get, like today, okay, I'm talking to you West Coast time at 5 a.m. I had to get 4 o'clock, get dressed and ready to go through and do this call.
Right.
I'm on a streak of about 200 days in a row. It's 187 without drinking caffeine. Now, I got to tell you, this morning was really tempting to go downstairs and grab some caffeine before this call. But I had a 187-day streak. I ain't messing with that. There's no way. Okay? Now, when you are trying to build streaks, from a habit standpoint, what we know is if you start a habit and you've had it for a month or 3 months or 6 months or 3 years, and you miss one day, it's not going to really affect you that bad. If you miss a habit 2 days in a row, you will get a little more wobbly. If you miss a habit 3 days in a row, it loses over 50% of its efficacy. If you miss a habit 4 days in a row, in your brain neurologically, it's as if you never had that habit. Now go back to our earlier conversation about 30-car sales guy who hasn't done that for years. In his mind, he's a 30-car guy. He stopped those habits so long ago, they're not even in his brain. And so when I work with people, so they're either trying to work on health and fitness, they're trying to work on sales acumen, they're trying to fill a number of people, I always pay attention to negative streaks. I'm not the superstar guy in anything in my life ever. And I told my kids, I go, look at me and look at your mom. We are not the most beautiful people. You've lived with us. We're not the smartest people in the world. So from the genetic lottery, you did not win. But here's what I'll tell you. Nobody can outwork me. I will freaking bury you. Like I can outwork anybody, and I have my whole life. And I take a certain joy in finding high talent people and burying them. Right? So when it comes to that, this is where anyone can win, regardless of where you came up in the talent lottery, is that if I'm working at you to develop that, we want no negative streaks that go more than a day. So if you're working really hard on talking to 4 people every day and you miss a day, no problem. Tomorrow, you talk to 4 people. If you never get more than a 1-day negative streak, you will bury everybody that you compete against. It's not the length of the positive streak. It's because you could go 5 days, miss a day, 4 days, miss a day, 3 days, miss a day, 8 days, miss a day, 9 days, miss a day. But if your negative streak is never more than a day, you just absolutely own it. Now, if you really want to be a lead, learn how to pay back habit debts. So I took a coaching certification class with Heroic, which if you ever want to check someone out, they're great. And the end of the coaching training after a year, graduation required you to run a Spartan race. You had to demonstrate your ability to face obstacles and overcome them, and you understood the material that we were going through.
Wow.
And so here, there's a couple hundred of us all going through a Spartan race. When you miss an obstacle in a Spartan race, you have to do 10 burpees.
Yeah.
And there's 30 obstacles. And so to train, they asked us to do a 100-day burpee challenge where 4 months before the race, on day 1, you did 1 burpee. On day 2, you did 2 burpees. Now, on day 1 was the first burpee I'd ever done in my life. But they said, and Joe DeSenda at Spartan, he said, but pay back your habit debt. We're like, what do you mean? He says, if you were supposed to do 4 today and you missed today, right, you can just go on to 5 tomorrow, but your habit debt is 4. Do 9 the next day. And so I did that, and I missed it. There's a couple different days that I missed it, like 8 and, 17 and 23. But I was on a cruise and I'm on 85, 86, 87, 88. Every morning I get up before my wife, I'd go run around the deck, right? And you could do a lap on the cruise ship, and I'd do like half a lap, 10 burpees, half a lap, 10 burpees, till I could get my 80 in.
There we go.
Well, we had a day where we had to get up at 7, go out for an excursion, didn't get back till 6 at night, had to go right to dinner, didn't finish that. So it's 9:30 at night and I'm exhausted, and I skipped 84. Oof. Now I'm making great progress, right? But habit debt. Like, no, I'm going to pay it back. Now, I couldn't do 165 burpees in a day. Okay, I'd never done that. But I took it, and so I did 84 and 21, 85 and 21, 86 and 21, 87 and 21, and paid back my habit debt.
Beautiful.
Not miss another day after that.
Awesome.
You want to reduce your negative streaks, pay your habit debt. When we went to the Spartan race, I'm 62, and I had a bunch of people that were 30, 40, 50 that didn't do the burpee challenge, right? They knew, they heard about it, but they didn't pay the price. And so you can do burpees for other people. So if you missed an obstacle and you owe 20 burpees, you could do 10 of them. I could do 10 of them and you got your 20. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so I only missed 2 obstacles, but I did 80 burpees for other people as we went through. The younger, stronger people, I'm the one that did it, and I'm the one that helped them get through.
I am going to consider this burpee challenge just because it sounds fun. All right. So we got a few more minutes left. We're going to do a little rapid fire section here. I know you're not prepared for these questions, which you haven't actually, we didn't really, this was free flowing today. This was awesome and incredible value that you gave. Okay. Whiskey or kombucha?
Kombucha, hands down. I'm a 100% non-drinker.
Got you. Rabbit or turtle?
Turtle.
Little plastic army men or Sega Genesis?
Sega Genesis.
If you are going into a zombie apocalypse, what would be your weapon of choice?
Food.
What's food?
Because I can hold them up, let everybody kill each other, eat my food, I'll be the last survivor.
Okay, my thing is a flamethrower, but I didn't actually think about food, so you're probably, that's a good one. What is your favorite phrase for business?
In order for things to get better, you need to get better.
Beautiful. Favorite book?
God, that's hard, man. That's. I have 5 kids. That's actually my favorite child.
Give me a book that is one of your favorite on marketing.
What a favorite? Well, you mentioned one of them, which is Cialdini's book on influence, because marketing is, influence to go through and have that happen. Cialdini's is one of the just classics when it comes to marketing.
Great book. And you know what's funny? So I'll make a side note here. When I picked up the book, it's a 450-page book, and you look at it on Audible, it's a 20-hour read. If you were to just listen to it all the way through in one speed, I've been listening to it around 3. So it's taken me more than most books take me. Normally I'm like 2 days. This will take me 4.5 days. But it's like 7 hours when you listen to it on 3X. Now, not everybody can listen to it on 3X right now, but at least it's one of the first times in a long time I've read a big book like that, because most are like 250, 300 pages. So that's just a little side note. Okay. What influential figure would you have dinner with tonight if you had your choice, alive or dead?
If I go dead, I would take Epictetus, right? The great Greek philosopher, one of the big guys in Stoic philosophy. And if it were alive, I'd probably take Tony Robbins.
Okay, awesome. Well, maybe we can make Tony Robbins happen. We'll work on that. So let's say you've got a business that's doing $10 million in sales a year. I write you a $300,000 check. Here, Mr. or Mrs. Business Owner, what would you advise them to do with that check to double their revenue? Profits, double their profits.
That's a great question. I would probably divide it into 3 $100,000 segments. I would take $100,000 and I would invest it in my top 20% people. Remember, we're talking about the 80-20. I'd take that top 20% and I would get them tools. I would get them staff. I would get them software. I would get them something. I would find some way to say, hey, if you could have some money to get some more tools or things that would make you more productive, what do you need? So I'd go to my top 20% and I'd take the first $100,000 and I'd make them more effective. I would take the second $100,000, you're going to laugh at this, and I would invest it in me as the business owner. I would go find a mentor, coach, somebody who was already 10 times further ahead of I was, and I would buy their time, and I would get them to look at my business and go through. So I'd seek mentorship, outside counsel that could actually help me turn that and go through.
Yeah.
And then I would take the last $100,000 and I would invest it in the execution, throughput, productivity of my team. Whatever we're selling, right, we have to deliver it. So there's some kind of operational team. And I would spend that money on making my operational team more effective. Because the worst thing in the world is have a great sales team that can sell and close clients, and then back at the home base, you can't deliver on that. You can't execute.
Right. So last but not least, walk us through briefly an obstacle that you faced in your own business, how you overcame that obstacle, and what your takeaway is that would help other business.
Yeah. Okay. This is, again, there's too many to choose from to make this a fair fight. But I would suggest that one of the biggest, a key obstacle for me was bad partners. So I had created I grew my business, and then someone said, hey, we should work together and go through. And we did. First partner embezzled money from me. Got us another partner. Second partner, 5 years later, embezzled money from me.
No.
Had a chance to get a third partner and wanted to say no because of what had gone on. And I'm like, and I wanted to blame my partners for being stupid, for embezzling money from me. But again, looking back, I had a role in all of those. In every one of those, I made a series of decisions that allowed all that to happen. There was nothing wrong with having partners. I was just really crappy at choosing them.
No.
And so I had to overcome this resistance that I had built up, that I can only count on me. I'm the only one that can do it. Everyone's going to rip me off. Everybody's going to do this. And therefore my business stayed at a very certain level of business because there was only so much I could do by myself. Right. So the only way to grow my business was to work with partners and expand, but that meant trusting and using them. And I was trying to avoid doing that. And so I had to have a long kind of talk with myself and go through, and I listed all the reasons why I created those problems where the partners embezzled money from me, decided which ones that I needed to change, and went into this meeting with the new partner in a much different mindset. And we, in 12 months, doubled our business. Beautiful. Because of what he brought to the table.
That's awesome.
So many people don't grow because they've been burned in the past, and they allow their past to define their future. And so they make poor decisions in the present because of something that happened in the past, because they never owned their side of it and still like to blame other people.
Chris, tell everybody where they can find you and how they can connect with you.
So this is easy. ChrisHunsicker.com, ChrisHunsicker.com. That's the easiest place to find me and go through. Next month, my new book, Unstoppable Culture, comes out, and it goes over a lot of the stuff that we've talked about in here, and release date September 15th. And so it'll be up on Amazon.
And this will be another Amazon book because you're already an Amazon bestseller.
I am, yes. The first one, Unstoppable You, over the weekend went #1 on Amazon. I was kind of proud of that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Hunsicker. Chris, thank you so much for joining us, and your insight was invaluable.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to 0 to 100 podcast. We hope you feel inspired and ready to accelerate your business. Remember, your journey to success starts with a single step. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving for greatness. For more resources and show notes, visit jaredguyrandolph.com. We'll see you next time.